everyone, Paul from High Tech Legion, and we'll be taking a look at the ASUS UEFI BIOS utility for the Z87 Deluxe motherboard. Now, if you're familiar with the ASUS UEFI BIOS, you'll know that most of the segments have the same BIOS. They either add a little bit or they take away a little bit, but the basis of the BIOS is usually the same. So if you don't have this specific board and you have another board, you will definitely be able to use this as a guide to help you navigate through that. Even though you might have a lower end, or maybe the one above the Deluxe would be the Deluxe Duo, and basically the BIOS is probably going to be the same. So let's go ahead and get started. If you look up towards the top left, you have ASUS UEFI BIOS utility. Right now we're in easy mode. To the right of that is exit and advanced mode. Below that on the left is the time and the date. Then when we go to the right, we will see Z87 Deluxe with the BIOS version. The CPU type is underneath that. The speed of my processor, and the total memory. To the right of that, you could set your languages from English to quite a few others. All you have to do is scroll that down. Then we have our CPU information. It shows our temperature and our voltage. To the right of that will be our DRAM information. As you can see, I have it set up to XMP at this time, DDR3 2400. And to the right of that is the CPU fan, and as you can see, I have it set to standard mode. Right now I am using Corsair memory, the new Vengeance memory that just came out, the Vengeance Pro, and I'm using a Corsair H100i to cool this system. Below that, you have different options. Now, like I said, this is easy mode, so you can change these things that are in here. System performance, if you want to do power saving, you could go ahead and click power saving. Right now it's set to normal. Then of course you have optimal, and then this is where you have this. Basically, this arrow shows you where you're at. So as you can see, the center normal. If I go to optimal, it's going to bring down the line on that side. Power saving, it'll go towards the right. Now, of course, you have your boot priority here, and basically what will happen is it'll show you your boot information, it'll show you your drives, and you just basically slide and drag where you want them, what you want to boot up first. Below that are different menus, different shortcut buttons: shortcut F3, advanced mode F7, SATA information, boot menu, and default F5. So if I really want to take a quick look at my SATA information, there you go. If we want to look at the boot menu, there you go. Could set the factory defaults, F5, and of course, advanced mode. For those of you who are a little bit more knowledgeable and you would like to tune your BIOS on your own, this is where you would go to do it. Of course, we have multiple different tabs here. We have my favorites. Of course, my favorites would basically be select an item, use the keyboard, put it in your favorites. Then you have your main, which shows you your BIOS information, your BIOS version, Southbridge stepping, CPU information, memory information, system language, date and time, and then of course your security if you want to set a security password for this. Now, they also added something here which is called Quick Note. It's pretty nice, because just say you were doing something, you like the setting and you might forget it. You basically, all you have to do is there you go, and then you click save and quit and it'll save it. So when you go to Quick Note again, it'll bring that back up for you. You also have last modified. It'll show you the last modification you did. So let's go into the AI tweaker, and this is where we start getting into the meat and potatoes of the BIOS itself. As you can see, we have the target CPU, we have the DRAM speed, we have the cache speed. we have the target DMI, and we have the target CPU graphic speed. Come down to AI overclocking tuner. You have 3 different options: auto, manual, and XMP. Right now I have it set to XMP, which is profile 1. Your CPU strap, you have different options there. Your PLL selection, of course you have different PLL selections. Your filter PLL. Now most of this stuff I leave to auto. There's really no sense in me changing it because ASUS has such finely tuned this board, I don't need to make that many changes. Now, I'm not saying that I don't like to tinker every once in a while, but it really doesn't make sense because they have tuned this board very well, so their auto rules usually are pretty damn good. Let's go to the multi-core enhancement. Of course, you could disable that or enable it. CPU core ratio. That has auto, sync all cores or per core. Of course, if you want to sync all cores, once you change your setting in here, so just say if I want to hit 47, it'll change all the cores to 47. So I'm going to put that back to auto. Minimum CPU cache ratio and maximum CPU cache ratio. They're both set to auto. They default at about 39 as you saw up here. So basically what you can do is you can change that to set your cache to cache at whatever specific you want. I would suggest if you're having a little problem overclocking, set it to 40 and you should be okay. Internal PLL over voltage. Of course you got that auto enabled and disabled. You have your base clock frequency. You can change that to 100 or 100 by 100. Your base clock frequency for your DRAM. So you could either go to 100, 133, or 100 by 100. Your DRAM frequency, of course, since I set the XMP profile, it's going to go ahead and change that to the XMP, but you could go ahead and set your dividers here. OC tuner, I leave the OC tuner as is because I like to manually tune it. But what's really good about the ASUS boards is you could go ahead and do ratio first or base clock first. So if you do ratio first, you're going to, of course, do your ratios for your CPU core, etc. If you do your base clock, you're going to tune your base clock. Now, if you remember Sandy Bridge and up, we normally don't play with the base clock anymore. The most you want to go is maybe 105 on a base clock to performance tune. EPU power saving mode, of course, I have that disabled. And then, of course, when we go into the DRAM timing control, this will show you your channels. And it will show you your settings. Basically, I just set the top channels myself and use the whatever is on the SPD for the other. If I want to go ahead and change my CAS and RAS and different command rates. And of course, as we scroll down here, you'll see your different timings if you really want to get deep into it. DigiPlus power control, load line calibration. You go all the way to level 8. Voltage frequency, auto or manual. If you set it to manual, it's at 300. Now if you remember that slider in AI Suite, if you watch the AI Suite video, this is what that's for the CPU frequency. You could go from 300 up. Now your load line calibration, of course, this is going to give you your stuff for your over voltage. So that's what that's for. The VRM spread spectrum, you can either disable or enable it. If you enable it, then you're going to get your CPU power phase control, auto, standard, optimize, extreme, or manual adjust, CPU power duty control, T-probe or extreme, your CPU current capability, CPU, let's go ahead and disable this a second. All right, there we go. That's set to auto. You could go up to 140. Power thermal control, DRAM current capability. Of course, your DRAM voltage frequency, you could set that to auto or manual. If you go to manual, you could set that the same way that you could set your voltage frequency. And then, of course, your phase control. You have optimized and extreme. I had no need to touch basically anything except for the load line calibration, and I'll show you that when I go into the tools here. I will show you the settings that I use to overclock this board to get 4.7 gigahertz. CPU power management, of course, you have your speed step technology, your turbo mode, your turbo mode parameters, and of course your frequency tuning modes and thermals. Now, if you remember, Haswell has a lot. This is a power saving CPU. It wants to save power, so there's a lot of C states on this. If you want to start playing with your stuff, basically auto set to default. This is where your C states used to be, but there's a lot of different C states on this board now. But the auto rules on this board are very good, and like I said, there's no need to really play with it. Extreme overvoltage, disabled or enabled. Fully manual mode. Now on this board you have fully manual mode. On a couple other boards you don't have that available. Remember, I was saying that some things are missing. So you could either enable it or disable it. If you enable it, you're going to get a couple extra modes that it'll give to you. Okay, CPU core voltage. You have adaptive, offset, manual, and auto. If you're going to be performance tuning a Haswell processor, I suggest use manual mode. You want to set that voltage and keep it there. CPU cache voltage. Again, this is different modes. CPU system agent. This is an offset. Of course, it's in a positive offset. Voltage offset sign, of course, and then you have your offset to auto. CPU analog. CPU system agent, analog, digital, SVID control, your CPU input voltage, DRAM voltage, PCH core voltage, VLX voltage, and then of course you have all your DRAM, your clock crossing reset voltage, PLL termination voltage, and your CPU spread spectrum, which I usually keep to disabled. Now when we go to the advanced, that's where we see our CPU configuration. Of course, you have all your stuff down there. Adaptive thermal monitor and hyperthreading. Under your PCH configuration, you have your PCI Express configuration, your rapid start technology, and smart connect technology. SATA configuration, of course, this is where all your SATA stuff is. System agent configuration, and this is your CPU audio device, your graphics, DMI configuration. This is for your PCI Express links, auto Gen 1, Gen 2, and 3. Your memory configuration, memory remap I have enabled. USB configuration, of course, you should be pretty familiar with that. It's on every motherboard, but the XHCI mode, Smart Auto, EHCI hands off is disabled, Legacy USB as enabled, and USB ports here are all enabled on the motherboard. Then we come to the platform miscellaneous, which is the PCIe native power management, and then on the board devices. This board has, of course, an HD audio controller, which is its sound card. It has a Bluetooth module on it and a Wi-Fi. It's all in one. It's a Wi-Fi Go module. It has an AS Media storage controller, so it has 2 extra SATA 6 ports on it. So you have 2 extra SATA 6 ports via an AS Media controller, and of course the Realtek LAN. And this also has an Intel LAN. So you're getting 2 hard wires, you're getting 1 wireless, and a Bluetooth. Your APM, this is for all your power losses and your shutdowns, and your network stack configuration. When we go to the monitor, of course this monitors our voltages. Simple as pie. And then we can also go to our CPU Q fan control. I have that set to auto. Everything basically right now is set to auto. Anti-surge support is enabled. When I'm overclocking. Now let's go to our boot. Of course, fast boot I have enabled. SATA support all devices. USB support I have on partial. Network stack driver is disabled. Next boot after AC loss, normal boot. Hardware fast boot is disabled. Direct key is enabled. Boot logo display, that's the boot logo to say ASUS. If you don't want to look at the Windows thing, you want to look at ASUS, that's what I keep on. This is your post delay. How many seconds do you want that screen to show before it shuts off? That's your post delay, 3 seconds. Boot up number state and wait for F1 on error. And then, of course, your option ROM messages. Then, of course, the setup mode here, which is, I have that set to easy mode. You could also change that to advanced mode. Compatibility modes. Secure boot, OS type, and key management. And of course, you have your boot option priorities. Of course, if I had more drives in here, you'd see more drives. Let's go to tool. Of course, you have your ASUS Easy Flash Utility 2. If I had something in there, it would tell me what folder and what drive it was in. Click on that and automatically flashes your BIOS for you. ASUS OC profile and ASUS SPD information. Let's go and look at that first. This is our JDEC specs. Basically, it'll show you what JDEC is, so you know what your specs are and what your timings are and what voltages you need. And now let's go ahead and go back and we'll go to OC profile. As you can see, I set a profile right here up on top. You have multiple profiles to set. All you have to do is load from profile 1, hit enter, load from profile 1, click yes. Now when I go to my AI tweaker, I should have, there we go. Alright. I should have my settings. Now, these were the settings that I used to get 4.7. Of course, I have it set to XMP profile 1. I synced all cores. My core ratio was synced, so I set it to 47. Everything syncs to 47. As you can see, my PLL voltage was set to auto. Digi power control. This is where I went with the Digi power control. I set the load line calibration to 8 because I really need it to stick. And if I need a couple extra volts when I'm running, a heavy test or something, I want it to stay. CPU voltage frequency I set to auto. On the power phase control, I have that at extreme. I found it worked better. On the T-probe, I left it at T-probe on the power duty control. That's the default, basically, is T-probe. My current capability, my CPU current capability, I set to 130. I didn't need the 140. I just went to 130 on that. I didn't change my thermal control, and my DRAM, I left normal. Now, these processors have they really don't like memory dividers for some reason. You're probably, a lot of times, you're better when you overclock the Haswell. Leave your memory at JDEC until you get your system stable, and then start raising your settings to see where you're at. You might be stable at 4.7 at 1333, which is JDEC, but when you put the XMP on, you're not going to be stable. But there's always a way you might be stable in between there, so work it up. You got to work a little bit with this. So we'll go back over and we'll scroll down. As you can see, I didn't do the fully manual mode. I just set my CPU core voltage to manual mode and went to 1.275. Did not overclock the graphics on this. And of course, since I'm using XMP, I got 1.65. Basically, that's all I did. And that's all you'll need to do. So in any case, Let's go ahead back into easy mode here. I want to say thank you everybody for watching, and this has been our overview of the ASUS UEFI BIOS utility for the Z87 Deluxe motherboard. Remember, if you haven't seen it at High Tech Legion, you might not have seen it at all. Visit us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/HTL Reviews. Tweet about us on Twitter, and that's twitter.com High Tech Legion. Of course, visit our webpage at www.hightechlegion for this review of the board and other reviews. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, because I know you're watching it now if you're watching this video. Have a great day, everybody. Stay thirsty, my friends. See you the next time. Bye-bye.